In this lesson, we'll take a look at how we can use Spotlight to paint photographic detail onto our models. So there may be times when there are types of detail from some kind of texture map that we've got that we want to use to paint onto our model. Before we do that, I actually want to add some bolts to this thing. So remember, we created that insert brush. So I'm going to go ahead and use that. I've saved it out as insert screw. You can find it in your project files, or you can save your own out that you've created. Let's go ahead and turn on our symmetry in the Y, radial symmetry, and let's create a large number of these. So maybe 24 or so. And you can see that this is off a little bit, so I'm just going to turn on local symmetry because we've moved this thing a little bit. And so local symmetry will allow me to add these right on the surface. So it's got multiple subdivision levels, so I'm just going to duplicate it. And let's go ahead and delete all the subdivision levels. We'll add these screws on there. We'll turn up the white color. So something like that. Then let's go ahead and under Subtool, Split Unmasked. Now we've got our bolts separate. We can go ahead and delete that copy that we made. So now let's say that we want to come in and paint some metal on this, and we have some images that we have taken, some pictures that we've taken that we want to use. So the first thing we'll do is go to Texture, and let's import those. And we looked at how to do that earlier. Let's go back and get our images, and we'll go into Texture, and we've got 4 images that we want to import. All right. So once we've got those images in, we want to add those to a Spotlight. So with this texture selected, you can see there's some buttons down here for dealing with this. So turning on Spotlight, Shift Z is also the hotkey for that. Also add to Spotlight. So I can add that to a Spotlight. And you can see here there's an image on our screen and a little manipulator. If I click inside the circle, I can move the manipulator, the dial. If I click on here, I can move the image. I can also choose how I can arrange the images. Okay, right now we only have one, so we need to keep adding some images here. It's kind of like a glass table that we're going to be placing all these textures on to be able to use. So I'll add that one. Let's go in and add this one. And we can add more textures in here. Okay, and then you can decide how you want to tile that. Tile unified, I'll put these all over to the side until you're ready for them. So there's a lot of different adjustments you can do to the actual images in here, but let's just look at the main thing. So our Spotlight radius is kind of the radius that our brush is going to be where we're painting through a particular image. Okay, so let's go ahead and click and bring this image out. And if we want to actually move around our model again, we can hit Z, and then we can come in and move around our model. You can see as I hover over this, it's giving me an indication of where I'm actually painting through. Hit Z again, and I can get this model in the right spot, or this texture rather. So I can kind of rotate it. Just click on it itself, so I'm not moving everything. We can kind of rotate it around, and then we can scale it. I'm just clicking on these little dials and dragging them around. Okay. Now once we get it in the right spot, we can hit Z, and now what I can do is come in and paint it. Of course, I need to get out of my insert brush here. Go to our standard brush. Make sure RGB is on at full intensity, and we can begin painting through. Now, depending on the resolution of the mesh, the texture may come out a little blurry. So if you want to, you could subdivide again. And you'll notice that we have those hard edges here. That's because we have that auto masking turned on. So we can go back into auto masking and turn that off so it's not constrained to a particular poly group. Okay. Now you'll see as I paint, I can get a higher resolution texture. As I come to the end, you'll notice that it actually will paint that hard edge. So I can come in here, now paint a portion of this if I want to. Kind of paint through that. Okay, and then I can kind of move that around, and my image is still in place. If I hit Z, I can move the image around, so maybe I just want to get that part, replace it, and then I can come in and paint a little bit more. So it's actually just kind of projecting through that particular image. If I want to get another image, I can go back and organize these, and then I can grab this one off. Again, getting it scaled appropriately, getting it in the right spot, hit Z, and I can start to paint it. If you want to use it to paint certain little areas, you can. I can come over here and start to blend this with the other texture, just so it's not an exact duplicate of the image. Okay, I can come over here and start to do the same thing. You move this model over here. Okay, and then with your pen pressure, you can sort of blend those together. Over here, maybe it's a little bit harder. Kind of blend those into one another, depending on the images that you have. Really nice to be able to paint through, and you get all that detail for free from that image. All you're doing is painting it onto your mesh. Okay, and if you want to, come back in with this one, kind of tile that back. Come back in with this one to add a little bit of grungy detail. Maybe you just want just a little bit of that coming in right in here. And so we can start to add that in. You can spend as much time on this as you want, or if you have one that's very, very close to already what you want, you can come in and just basically paint it through the whole thing. Okay, so let me go ahead and pause the video, and I'm just going to complete this circular part of this. All right, so I've got that added on there. Once we are done with that, we can hit Shift Z to turn that off. We'll go ahead and clear the canvas out. And you can see we've got now that paint added. Now the nice thing is we can still paint on top of this if we want to. So for instance, I can sample any color from here, maybe darken it up a little bit, and then underneath all of these screws, I can come in and create a little bit of darkness in there, rust. If I wanted to use symmetry to do them all at once, I could do that too. And one thing that I wanted to show you is the fact that if we move up in here, and you can see my brush size, my current brush size. If I move back, my brush size stays the same relative to what I'm painting. If I turn this dynamic size off, and I come in here and change the draw size to what it was before, if I now back up, my draw size has stayed the same, but not relative to the model, so that I'm now painting bigger. So one of the cool things now in ZBrush is the ability to turn on this dynamic draw size, so that if I'm painting a particular kind of detail, and I'm out here doing it, and I've got the brush size the correct size, making some shadows or something, and then I move in closer to get a little bit closer look. In the past, the brush size would be much too big now, but now with the dynamic brush size, it's still the right size, and I can go in and make those changes. So a very nice addition here. So I can go in and add a little bit of rust to some of these areas. If I want to maybe put a little bit more red into it, you can sort of do that. If you want to add sort of streaks coming down, you can do that too. It'll all serve to just add a little bit more realism. You can come down from the top as well. Maybe add a little bit of dirt along the bottom. But this is all poly paint, so you can, it's not a texture, it's a poly paint, so you can come in and paint over the top of it and manipulate this however you want at this point. Okay, so that's a look at using Spotlight to project detail through images that you've collected. So you just want to load those up as textures, load them into your Spotlight, and if you want to, you can actually save out spotlights and then load them in later. If you have a collection of images that you always want to be able to access and use, you can save those out for reference later on. Okay, so the next thing that we'll talk about is posing characters. So there may be instances even without characters, but we want to kind of pose different limbs or move parts based on kind of a limb type hierarchy. So let's take a look at how we can start to deform and pose our characters using some different techniques. So we'll do that next.